Welcome to the Millennial Diner podcast. It's me, Jeff. I'm here at the diner with Phil as usual. And today, oh, this is super sick. We have Sam here with us today. Say hi, Sam.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Sam, I think you're going to love this diner. As a New Yorker, I think you'll appreciate the extent of what they have to offer. I'm actually going to, the waitress is here waiting, so I'm just going to throw in, I'm going to do some steel cut oatmeal today with a little bit of peanut butter in there, some berries on top, and a coffee, hot coffee with oat milk. That's what I'm gonna do today. Sam, I know you've been looking over the menu. What are you in? What are you gonna get today?
I think I'm gonna go with some chocolate chip pancakes
Yeah, that's a good one.
and a black coffee. Gotta keep it tight.
Nice, nice. No fruit with that pancake. You just want the cake
I
and
mean, maybe
chocolate.
some bacon, I guess, if I gotta get a side.
Yeah, the greatest fruit of all, bacon. All right, Phil, that sounds pretty good. What are you gonna get?
I think I'm gonna. Can you first describe to me what a steel cut oat is?
I always figure that's just how they like cut it up in the
Like,
the
like
lab.
chop
Yeah,
them?
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
They put it through the
I've
conveyor
always
belt.
wondered what. Yeah, I never really
I
fully
never really looked
understood.
into it. Yeah,
All
it
right,
just
all right.
sounds better than oatmeal, you know?
Well, it sounds tough, like rough,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
strong. Yes. Oh no. Oh,
Like
those are
how a
steel
man would
cut.
eat oatmeal.
right.
Yeah. Right. I think I'm gonna have rye toast with a little bit of butter and a black coffee. That sounds good. I think that sounds good today.
A very traditional order for you, Phil. Very American of you, I think. Talking about
Extremely.
tradition.
Yeah, yeah. It,
Then
it is fairly idiotic for me to always get this, but yet
there it
I'm
is.
going to.
Yeah, well, we are going to be covering Green Day's 2004 punk rock opera, American Idiot, today. We're very excited about this. This is when we started the show. This was one of the albums we had on our top 10 definitely covering list. So we finally got to it. So we're very excited, and we're very excited to have Sam here. Sam, you're a big Green Day fan. You celebrate their entire catalog, I believe.
Every era. Yeah.
Every era, yeah. And it's funny, we are talking about the era where they actually put on costumes and had a look more so than any other era for this album. But what's kind of like your journey into music? What shaped your taste and got you into Green Day, and kind of like where it sits in your on your shuffle of your
Of course. Well, I am wearing my Billy Joe Armstrong shirt today. It was some special, I don't remember what it was for, some kind of charity thing, but it is St. Patrick's Day when we were recording, and so it's got it's
That's it.
some
Yeah.
Green Day gear. Um, yeah, I mean, actually, the biggest thing probably that got me into Green Day was my dad, who was always very into Green Day when we were kids growing up. He was like a, lawyer by day, like, wish he was a rock star by night. He plays guitar and has various instruments and stuff. And he was into, I guess it was just rock at the time, but as we imagine, classic rock when he was a kid,
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd. And yeah, by the 90s, he had become a Green Day fan. Pretty specifically, I think I remember him really liking Nimrod. And me and my sisters, he, taught us to sing Good Riddance, which he would play on his guitar and we'd sing along with. But although I do remember also specifically being very upset by the message of the song "Nice Guys Finish Last," which was like a
Yes.
first grader thought was not a good
No.
moral I didn't agree with. But yeah, I think that was the Good Riddance, like Nimrod era, I guess, as like an elementary schooler, really imprinted on me. And then kind of like being in middle school when American Idiot came out became like perfect, impressionable timing, I think, for anyone if in their formative years to have American Idiot debut. And yeah, I mean, from there, I mean, I've always been a giant fan of theirs. They're probably, my favorite band. I'm sure we'll get into the if that's an embarrassing thing or not, but I'll say, I see some Gen Zers sometimes with like Green Day shirts on as though they're just another, classic rock t-shirt. And I think that Green Day's pulled through. I think that they've whatever the embarrassment that they might associate with them is long in the past now.
Well, it's funny because we'll talk about that because this album does come at a time when they were on the downturn of their career, so to speak. But
Hmm.
we'll get into that. But yeah, they are classic rock band. They are the classic rock band. They are the Who. They are like
Mhm.
that's who they've become in some bizarre way. But the fact that they're this new tour they're doing is stadiums. I mean, they're this far into
Yeah.
their career and they are playing stadiums. So they are, yeah, they are cool to the children today, I guess.
The kids they wouldn't consider them mid, would be
Yes.
the way to approach it.
They're straight bussing, no cap.
No cap, yeah.
No cap. Oh man,
But I just want to say I love that your dad had you and your family sing along to Good Riddance on
Yeah,
your
and
life.
he's still a pretty big Green Day fan. There's a story he told at one of my sister's weddings actually about he was a member of the Idiots Club, which is the official Green Day
oh,
fan club.
yep.
So he got on a listing for when 21st Century Breakdown came out, which is probably around like the time of our family's like collective Green Day fervor. The day it came out, they did the Green Day played like a private show, like some radio, like some tiny club in New York,
Yeah.
and he got on a list to go, and so he brought my sister Lizzie, and they were waiting online outside. Um, and they, someone came to kind of check like who their credentials or whatever. And he got to say that he was here with the Idiots Club. So he thought that was pretty funny.
That's fun.
It's legit. That is
Yeah.
legit. Yeah. It also warms my heart because most of my life has been trying to get my dad to like Green Day, and the closest I got was American Idiot. And it's not that he doesn't like it, like he just doesn't like that punk sound, which, as you can imagine, kept a barrier between us and our music taste. But with American Idiot, I remember him saying, "I really like the words. I just don't like the music." So that's the
Yeah.
closest I got.
I would say my dad and our family are also really into a lot of like musical theater too, which we'll obviously get to later. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of that rock opera kind of tradition of like Tommy and Jesus Christ
Yeah.
Superstar. Like, I mean, that's really all kind of mixed up, I think, in this album too. So
Oh, for sure. So aside from Green Day, who else kind of like would round out your? Let's say this. Let's say we go back in time and we're able to stop the Iraq War by, I don't know, attaching a bunch of the people who made the Iraq War possible onto Mount Rushmore, and somehow it gets blown up while they're there. Let's just say that happened. Mount Rushmore's gone. You've been tasked to rebuild it out of clay, maybe Play-Doh, whatever materials you have handy. Who's going on your Mount Rushmore for music?
I'm besides, Billy Joe, Mike Dirnt, and Trey Cool. I don't know. No. I mean, I think got to start with Bruce. Definitely like my favorite, artist, songwriter. Um, and then I was thinking about this because it's like I definitely would say like my music kind of know-how and taste is obviously not as like in depth as you guys, but I feel like when I really think like personally like my like letterboxed Matt Rushmore like four favorites, I'd have to put the Scott Pilgrim soundtrack. So I don't know if I could put like the Sex Bombs on Mount Rushmore fictionally, but kind of the whole Edgar Wright project of kind of like movie music would go in there.
I love
Um,
that. That's one of my favorite answers thus far in the
yeah.
history of the show.
That was one where it's like I had like my college dorm sophomore year, I got like a Bose speaker, and I remember turning on I think it was the Scott Pilgrim CD, and my roommate's mom being horrified. Like playing like rock and roll music. I was like, this is a fictional band. But yeah, and then I think to represent like the theater side, I would probably just put up like Stephen Sondheim as kind of the great one there. Um, and then one more band. I mean, I think when I think back on high school and like what I was listening to, especially then, like, I mean, you gotta have the Beatles, I think, represented. Like that was I listened to a lot of like our New York's, I think it was 104.3 classic rock, which in LA is a pop station.
Yeah.
But in New York it was K Rock, I think, or whatever.
Yeah.
But that was like, yeah, I think, but I would kind of have them to represent like that classic rock
Awesome.
W-
Yeah, it's
Was that
it's.
is
Go
that
ahead.
BAB 1043? Is that BAB?
in New York. It might be
Yeah.
different now. I don't know. It was definitely like because it wasn't K Rock, but it was like whatever our classic rock station was. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's what that
That might
was.
have been BAB. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
As you were. Sorry.
we had that coming through the airwaves out on Long Island for sure, pumping the sounds of the Beatles. I actually your whole Mount Rushmore is it's funny to me because it's like you take pieces of all four of these and it's American Idiot, right? Like it's all there.
Right. Hmm.
And also you're the first one to put Sondheim on the Mount Rushmore, and that's also going down in history for our podcast. So we're really excited about that. Awesome. If you were to pick a song from any one of these artists or soundtracks to play right now, what would you pick?
I mean, I got to go with Bruce, Rosalita,
Yes.
open parentheses, comes to buy my fire, close parentheses. They're like one of my favorite all time songs, I think.
I don't know, Phil, do you want to play Rosalita?
Hell yeah. I want to play Rosalita.
All right, here we go. Like I said earlier, we mentioned before, we're here to talk about American Idiot. We are recording this in the year 2024, which is the 20th anniversary of this record, and somehow more relevant than ever for various reasons. Green Day, this is a very interesting Green Day album because I don't know a lot of popular rock bands who basically had 2 points of explosions where
Right.
they first had it coming off of Woodstock 94. There's the infamous video, if you've ever seen it, of them playing Woodstock 94 and people throwing mud at them and then throwing the mud back at everybody and having the best time. I think after that, Dookie became a sensation, and they rode that for a few years. And then as things go, people started finding other things. And by 2002, they were on the Pop Disaster Tour with Blink 182, who was at the height of their wave. And the Green Day band was offended, I would think, because they were put on first. They did not close that show. And some say, and I think they talk about this in Dan Ozzi's book, Sellout.
Mm.
Mark Hoppus actually talks about this from Blink, that it felt like Green Day was like, okay, I see the situation here. So whatever they were going to do next, they had a goal in mind to reclaim the crown, so to speak. But apparently they were writing an album, right, called Cigarettes and Valentine, and supposedly they were stolen, the masters or the demos, supposedly, allegedly. And instead they scrapped everything and decided to just come up with this little ditty up. And that was the album that put them back on top of the world, and probably is the reason why today they are the prominent classic rock band of the 90s, basically still going.
Right.
So pretty incredible in that sense. Real quick, it came out September 21st, 2004 on Reprise Records. As with their previous four albums, it was produced by Rob Cavallo in collaboration with the band. Rob Cavallo comes up a lot in this podcast, even this season, because he did Dookie, he did Jawbreakers, Dear You. Last season, of course, he did Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. So Rob Cavallo is a hero on this in this diner, but his work with Green Day is probably what he's most well known for. And yeah, they made this album, but they didn't want to just make an album. They took a look at the landscape of 2003, 2004 America. They were not happy with some of our foreign policies that we were involved in, and they created a story around what it was like to be young in a land full of idiots. How does that sound, Phil?
That sounds about right. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of amazing to think that this is their seventh album. Like, and it's the biggest one for them. I mean, I think this is the album. If you're going to sum up Green Day, this would be the album that you'd go to. And it's amazing that they went for like a punk rock opera. Like, instead of going for just another straight album, it's like they were like, Blink, because Blink totally like scooted right past them in popularity. And I think that Green Day got mad. I think you're right, and that they were like, I think we can come up with something bigger. And they went for, well, what's what people aren't doing is a punk rock opera.
They said,
Um,
"Hold my PBR."
Hold my PBR. I'm gonna go do a punk rock opera, and I'm gonna do it really well. Um, Jeff, do you know what the first generally accepted rock opera is?
Uh, no, I do not. I hope
It
you
is
do.
S I do. It's S.F. Sorrow by the Pretty Things from 1968.
I have never heard of that.
That's a me neither. I never did either because I'm more familiar with like Tom, like Sam, you said Tommy and you
Mm.
said Jesus Christ Superstar, and you said a third one. I forget now what it was, but like you you've got Tom, like I just said, Tommy, Jesus Christ Superstar, but you also would have albums that were like Queen's Night of the Opera is a rock opera, Rocky Horror
Hmm.
as a rock
Mhm.
musical. You can even go so far as more recent stuff with the Black Parade, but I think, or you go back a little bit to Ziggy Stardust and the rest of the title that escapes me because that's a very long title to remember. But really, I think the archetype for the rock opera is The Wall from Pink Floyd from 80, the one 80. I always forget what that one is. Um, So I think it's fun that they were like, we're going to embrace the rock opera thing and come out with this batshit crazy album that summed up the frustration of the times. I know it summed up mine, I can tell you that. Sam, what is it about this album that sunk its teeth in you?
I mean, and I think it's why it ended up hitting was that it, I think somehow took the Green Day overall aesthetic or kind of the, message of the kind of like frustrated teen in suburbia trying to get out, which I think kind of spans across their whole first, 10 plus years of their career. And sort of like I guess I would maybe think of it as like also the Billy Joe Armstrong story, right? Where he's like writing from, personal things or whatever was kind of going on with him, like as a teen. And somehow I think that kind of the album almost exists on its own as like a perfect encapsulation of everything that come before as kind of concept album storytelling. But at the same time, because of when it came out, it suddenly clicked for a lot of people also politically, I think. And then like
Yeah.
kind of the culture, kind of caught up to Green Day like in a wider way of feeling frustration with like, either politically or culturally and this kind of like the idea of the kind of post 9/11 kind of like lockstepping of patriotism while like freedom's being diminished. And obviously, like here, it's like going into the war in Iraq and kind of like doing all this stuff built on lies, and like that kind of like frustration where it kind of turned like the whole country into like teenagers without control over their destiny in a way. Like that these things were kind of just happening outside of your ability to affect them, right? And that's like I think that is like the kind of like the teenage like angst comes from that, right? You are an adult, you're like smarter now, you're like aware of what's happening, but you're not in control, you're not independent of your own life. And I think that the idea of like the American idiot as like, the parent controlling you, but also as like the Bush administration or like the Red America or like this kind of post 9/11 security apparatus and the media. Like I think it's like why it obviously spread so far, right? Because it wasn't just it was so deeply personal in so many places, in a way like the most like personal album that Billy Joe, especially like his writing throughout it, he talks about it. Like, I mean, I think like, I mean, we'll get into it, but like, to like what Wake Me Up When September Ends, I think being like the perfect example of that, right? Where in 2004, a song with the word September in the title, it's probably the
Yep.
only thing anyone could think about. And then when Billy Joe Armstrong talks about it, it's not even on his mind, right? It's
Right.
about his father who passed away like in the month of September, right? So it's like it's such I think it's like that kind of like lightning in a bottle thing that speaks to why I caught on, but I think also like for me listening or anyone listening as like a kid, you can feel the kind of like the big political ideas that are exciting, but also at the same time, this kind of like teenage, punk angst in it that I think both of those things happening at once is like why it became like such like an important thing deep down.
Yeah, absolutely. And well said. And it's funny because when I look back at this album now, and I always thought about it as this, it was their political album. But if you kind of were to take out American Idiot, the track, if you were to take out Holiday, suddenly it's just a there and back again sad story about some teen who's trying to get out of his hometown, falls in love with somebody, finds a new identity. Nothing works out, and he ends up going back home again. It's a there and back again story, and which fits as you're saying, like it's probably more personal to Billy Joe and his experience and how it felt to be these characters. But then when you put in these more political songs, it's like, oh, is that because of what's happening out here that this suburban malaise and suburban struggle of feeling trapped is partially because of that? And there's nowhere to look to. There's no like hope out there because look what's actually happening around this country, you know. But also is the main character also an American idiot in his own way because does he think he can get out and change and do these things? And he's presented with different opportunities, whether it's a drug addict in St. Jimmy or someone who wants to change the world in what's her name, and then ultimately he's just back home again. So, who is the real American idiot? Is what we should wonder as we go through. Bill, your thoughts?
On the album? Oh goodness. Such a I find this to be a very complicated album to listen to over the years. Mostly because I keep changing a little bit of my opinion of it, right? Like, or not of certain songs. And like for me, it ages differently with me. Every time I listen to it, I kind of like I'll go back like and really listen to it. I kind of pick up on something else. Like, and Jeff, like what you had said, if like you kind of subtract a couple things from this, it's like the leave and come back, kind of an album. But adding in the more political stuff really adds another layer to it. And I remember when this came out, I was like, yes, you know what? I'm very annoyed too at where this world's going because I didn't like Bush, still don't like Bush. I generally don't. No, I don't. Not generally. I don't vote red whatsoever. I'm admittedly also part of the problem because I'm always going to vote blue. That's just where I am, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. I've acknowledged that. But like, I remember when I was a part of the anti-Bush stuff, or like Rock Against Bush. Those albums, I was like, yes, I agree, and like I've kind of mellowed out over the years. I'm not as no, still as angry. Um, but with this album, I think I kind of approach it a little differently, and I see like my kids now who are getting older, and like what saddens me, Jeff, is thinking that I'm like, wow, we really haven't changed too much in 20 years, and that really is what saddens me. Yeah. So that's kind of why I had this kind of a weird, complicated relationship with his album because the idealistic me 20 years ago was like, oh, this album's gonna help make the world better because we're gonna call things out. And then 20 years later, I'm like, no, we're still kind of, but things are different, but still sort of the same. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think, recently around New Year's 2023 and 2024, Green Day performs this and they create a stir in Fox News because instead of I don't want to be a part of your redhead agenda, they have now changed the lines to MAGA agenda,
Right.
which goes back to your point. It's like we just changed the name, but like it's the same spirit of what the issue was 20 years ago. But but
Right.
but with
So what are you
that,
gonna do?
well, we're gonna talk about American Idiot, the title track,
Let's
first
let's
track
do
on the
that then.
album.
All right, let's crank it. Let's go.
Well, you crank it is the right word for it. This album kicks off with a very very ferocious punk song, a protest song of sorts against the idiocy that has taken over. Um, it's just it's funny because even today they still I think they pretty much open with this song usually. Last few times I've seen them, and it's just like it it's so focused and clear and simple with its message, but packaged in this like just a sick ass punk song that like is full of hooks and it just gets you going.
It's a bop. It's a total bop. This whole song. I mean, but I remember going to like listen to it and I'm like, yeah, I'm not a part of Redneck Agenda too. I mean, totally. I'm totally along with this. Although I don't think I really picked up, to be honest, I don't think I really picked up on the fact that it's like really he kind of is blaming the media a lot in this song for selling the story. And I kind of was like, oh, I gotta be honest, I never really picked up on that, particularly like cable news aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you think back then that like post 9/11 infrastructure and the kind of like this, falsehood of like the war in Iraq being perpetuated. It is pretty, yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It's like that's like his target in a way, and his kind of like angle in there.
That one nation controlled by the media. Like I totally picked up on that, but I always felt it was bigger than that. Like who's controlling the media behind the scenes? I always went. I guess I went to full conspiracy theory, one step layer. I'm like, oh no, come back down, Phil. Come back down. It's just the media. We're just gonna. It's just that level.
Well, the subliminal mind fuck America. I mean, and the other thing about it 20 years later, it's like we saw how what started as this uber patriotism that was sold to us at the time, and how that's kind of permeated for 2 decades, and now you have the situation we have now where patriots are storming the Capitol, which is like, what? Some of those people were not listening to Green Day very closely, is what I think from that.
I think there's also like that bridge, I think, with the media as like a centerpiece of it between the kind of like, like I guess maybe like the Dookie era. And it also kind of sets up, I guess, like this character of Jesus of Suburbia and the idea of like sitting around watching TV, right? It's like very kind of like classic Green Day image that returns throughout the rest of the album, like kind of, it culminating in toward the end when you have like the Mike Dirnt verse on the like second to last track. I fell asleep watching Spike TV, right?
Yeah.
It's like not a good
Right.
thing.
No.
I think the idea of like just like being on the couch and absorbing what is coming out and eating that stuff is definitely like kind of a representation of like everything that the album is like afraid of, right?
Yeah. We're no longer watching an animated dog crudely throw shit around while we smash up our couch. But we're still on the couch. We're still watching. We're still
Yeah.
our brains are still being turned to mush. Phil, should we play American Idiot?
No, absolutely.
All right.
Oh,
Here
wait,
is.
I'm sorry. Wait, I forgot. I was supposed to put up a bigger front. No, Jeff, we shouldn't play this one. Okay, now you go. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Just
I don't
kidding.
know. I don't know who's funding you to say that, but nonetheless, here is American Idiot off the album American Idiot. Track 2, we have the intro of our protagonist of this story, Jesus of Suburbia. Not only that, we have our first suite on the album. You got 5 chapters to this song, and this is not the first time they do it. Jesus Suburbia is broken down into these 5 parts. Jesus Suburbia, part 1, part 2, City of the Damned, part 3, I Don't Care, part 4, Dearly Beloved, and part 5, Tales of Another Broken Home. This song is massive at this point in time. Not too many pop punk bands were doing over 9-minute songs in general. Kind of goes against the principles of punk rock in a lot of ways, which is probably why they broke it down into 5 different parts, which is 5 little mini songs. But really, it's an important song because one, it really states the themes of the album, what our character is struggling with at home, and what he needs to do to go off on his journey that's going to take him to the big city. So he is in suburbia, and he's deemed himself Jesus of Suburbia.
Yeah, I love this suite.
Yeah, good.
No, go for it, Phil.
That was from what I read. This was originally 3. He put together off 3 songs, mushed them together, and that's what created this.
I was just gonna say I love this this whole suite, and I do feel like it's like, I mean, there's obviously like the idea of like even 20 years later, even less shocking. But even having this character at the center of this album named the Jesus of Suburbia, in like, you know, if you think about like the kind of Bush like Christian culture of like the time, also like a very like provocative thing to like hang this album around. The other thing I really remember, like why loving this suite too, is that, you know, American Idiot, Holiday, Boulevard, Broken Dreams, like those are like the singles off of this, and they were pretty omnipresent everywhere. Like Boulevard of Broken Dreams, like was on Smallville, like that was like a
Yes.
Beatles run. Like you like could not, you knew what those songs were, but they, I mean, Jesus Suburbia did not get radio play like the same way. You know what I mean? I mean, it is like a 10-minute song. So it's like this was like I think like turning on the album as a kid and like hearing this crazy 10-minute suite of these great songs and setting up this like narrative and these and the character is like very clear what's happening here. And it's like it is like a very exciting listen, I think, like thinking back then. And like definitely like I, you know, the obsession with the album for me kind of like roots in this like suite, right? It's like, you know, it was like take it or leave it, Holiday and Boulevard of Broken Dreams, which do like have like a, you know, they kind of sync up like on the album. But like this is like, to me, this is like really like what American Idiot is all about. It's like this track here.
Yeah, I agree 100%. When I think of this album, it's the beginning of this song that I think of. I think of that just I'm the son of rage and love. And it's like, okay, this is where we're kicking
Yeah.
off from. Okay,
Which
we're
is,
getting
I
there.
think, like Billy Joe, when they were when they decided they were going to like write this epic concept, I'm pretty sure that the first two pieces we hear later, which are the pieces that Mike Dirnt and Trey Cool perform, and they wrote them first, and it sort of like inspired Billy Joe to kind of get working on it. And he says he was on a walking around just thinking, and the lyrics, "I am the son of rage and love, the Jesus of suburbia," came to, that's what he was thinking on the walk. And when he had that thought, he realized how like massive that idea was. And he said he was like scared but also like excited and like locked it, like this is it, you know, like it, like that is like a, you know, it's like kind of the thesis statement for like the whole album, but also like obviously like a kind of mega idea here.
Yeah.
It's good that it's funny that you said that it's the thesis album or thesis statement of the Sun of Rage and Love, because really that are adjectives for the other two characters who come into the story. Because Saint Jimmy is just he's rage. He's like rebellion and danger and everything. And then what's her name is like the love aspect, like the follow your morals and ethics kind of like. So even in the beginning line of the big song, and Jeff, I agree with you. Like this is where the album really starts. Um, is he's already setting up the other two characters. So it's kind of brilliantly done in a cheeky, sneaky little way. And like I said, Jeff, yes, I do think the album actually starts here, because I feel like American Idiot, the song is the set piece to like, here's the tale. We actually get into the story here. Um, and then I kind of think the rest of the album kind of gets connected, and like a couple of the songs get connected together tissue wise. Like really, I actually only think there's like 8 songs on this album. That's just my a little weird way of thinking. But we'll go through that as we go. So
Well, there's just songs that we'll talk about it more. Like this is the suite as it is, but even on
yeah.
Spotify today, if you listen to the album, there are songs that are on one track basically that they have to be put together. Like
Hmm.
they're a combo deal, which is I like that the kids today, that's how they're getting this, you know. Um, but you know, just going through Billy Joe's writing here, I just love. I mean, this is. I feel like he's at the top of his game for this album. It's like he really, when Sam, you're saying that story where he had this idea. It's like he really like elevated himself. I just love these little moments where it's like, you know, when while the moms and Brads are away, so it's like mom and her whoever her boyfriend is at the time, you getting that.
Right.
The of course we get the TV again, the sitting on my crucifix, living room, the getting my television fixed, sitting on my crucifix, um and then little things like the city of the damned. It's like this story is about this kid who needs to get out of here, right? Like at the center of the earth in the parking lot of the 7-Eleven where I was taught. Um, the motto is just a lie. It says home is where your heart is, but what a shame because everyone's heart doesn't beat the same. Again, like that feeling of not fitting into everybody else. Like, I don't belong here. everyone's heart beats the same, but mine doesn't. I'm not supposed to be here, and I need to get out of here. Which also going back to it, like, and Phil and I have discovered this doing this podcast. It's like how many of these albums over this 2 decade period have songs somewhere or some punk band is like, we need to get out of this hometown. Like it's just like the constant thing that happens over and over. So to have the full album explore that feels like the real culmination of that.
Jeff, you had said these little moments of things, and I wanted also, he also uses these lines to really showcase where his generation. It's funny because this album is like, it's like a mishmash of like Gen X and Millennial in this, because Billy's Gen X, but then the rest of us were listen to it in this group are the Millennials. And he says, everyone's so full of shit and we're born and raised by hypocrites. It's hearts recycled but never saved from the cradle to the grave. We are the kids of war and peace from Anaheim to the Middle East. We're the stories and disciples of the Jesus of suburbia. And I feel like that connects. I remember really connecting with that because I remember being younger as a kid, 10 or 11, and we had the first Iraq war. And then now we've gone back and it's 2004. Now we're in the second Iraq war. And then on top of that, now we're also getting into Afghanistan. Like, so like I have always kind of, they're setting up the story that there's always been this English animosity war somewhere in the world at some point. And I feel like that is a way to illustrate the unease that the generation is feeling. And it's good. We're kind of at war. We're at war with ourselves. We're at war with our parents. I mean, we're talking about these. We're raised by the hypocrites who like tell us one thing but then do another, right? So it's such great writing in like little snippets where you really get a sense of the characters and the feeling that Billy Joe has.
I love that line, Anaheim to the Middle East too. It also gives us the specificity of California, which returns in Holiday. And I mean, it's the first kind of idea of we're rooted actually in, whether it is Anaheim that Jingletown is, or Oakland, or wherever it is that we are. It's like, it is like, kind of definitively saying like, this is somewhere in California, this is happening, but the equating Anaheim obviously with like Disneyland, but also just kind of like, kind of SoCal, like wasteland, with the Middle East. Just generally, it does like show like the times, but also I think like that, like this is what's happening. It's like it's both this huge political message, but also so small and intimate and personal.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Anaheim to the Middle East. I mean, yeah, I always think it's hard not to think about Disneyland being in Anaheim, but also this idea of like, we are the kids of war and peace for Anaheim to the Middle East. It's also like the uniting of like everybody who's young in the world right now is dealing with this insanity and the connecting of that. And that's kind of like this overwhelming feeling that might be leading to Jesus of Suburbia's need to leave home and find what he's looking for on the other side. Phil, I'm gonna play Jesus of Suburbia, so you can't try to stop me.
You know what? It's a 10-minute song, Jeff. You know how I feel about long songs.
But it's a suite, so technically you can break it down and look at it that way.
Actually, I'm gonna hot take. This is probably one of the few 9-minute songs I actually enjoy. So you have my blessing to go ahead and listen to this one.
All right, here is Jesus of Suburbia. Track 3. We're going to get very political here. This is where we're in the story. I guess at this point he has left town and he's gone to the big city.
He's on his way to the city.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe he's on his way, but he's going for a holiday from his life. Yeah, but for the most part, this song does seem to stand as a direct protest song, more so than the story, I feel like. But I'm curious what you guys think.
I'm going to defer to Sam to start. Go ahead, Sam.
No, I would definitely say I think that I guess it would be the bridge in the song where we kind of meet the representative from California who really just starts Sieg Heiling and hoping to pulverize the Eiffel Tower. Yeah, I mean that is pretty political. Like, but
I
I do, yeah.
I also feel like that is like I can't know for sure, but I feel like it's Billy Joe's favorite thing to perform because I feel like
I
he
mean, to
was
talk about the before, I mean, it's a wild thing because it is like it is like a character. It's kind of the first like other character we meet in the album. Besides, I mean, obviously there's like Jesus who is nominally who's singing or sometimes not. It's like, we're in his perspective. This is the first time he kind of drops, it seems like he's dropping that perspective to perform this other person he's either encountering in the city or the road or just in like the culture. But I feel like this is the song where when I've seen Green Day the last two times, he has to kind of pause and give his speech about no racism, no homophobia, no anti-Semitism. Like he gives this whole thing because it's like chant in the middle of Holiday, like before he can start Sieg Heiling and performing this like really heinous, like kind of like this like basically this like all far right like Nazi congressman, I guess.
yes.
But also he clearly loves doing it because it is like the most, it's kind of the first like real theatrical moment of like the album too, in a way of like having this like other character suddenly enter. Yeah, it's so good. I think the other thing that really sticks to me about Holiday and then turns into Boulevard is I think these are the music videos I remember the most too at the
Yeah.
time, and like that
Well,
aesthetic, the guys in the car, and then the videos were also linked. I remember because at the end of the Holiday, they get out of the car, and Boulevard Broken Dreams begins with them getting out of the car. It's like the same
right.
shot basically, and then opposite in the album, these songs were like tied together too.
Yeah, the car breaks down at the end of
Yeah.
of Holiday, and then we open up in a much sadder song where they have to walk that lonely road together because they don't have a car
Yes.
anymore. Yeah, very clever.
Yep.
You know what's interesting? It's we haven't really talked about it too much, but going into this one off of Jesus Suburbia, we're talking about this story, and the other part of this album that sets it apart from most of the albums we cover is that it did become a Broadway show. Uh, not too long, like within like 4 or 5 years after the album came out. Uh, it went up in Berkeley first, and then came to Broadway. And it's interesting because like I think when I listened to the album before I saw the Broadway show, I had an idea what the story was. I wasn't sure, but I thought the Broadway show did a very good job of really like, here's our guy, here's Jesus Suburbia, and here he is off on this journey, and we're about to meet this alter ego character, Saint Jimmy. Um, Sam, have you seen the show?
Yeah, I've seen it many times. Yeah, I've seen it. I think I saw it twice on Broadway. Once with Billy Joe
Yeah.
playing Saint Jimmy, which he did for like a few weeks. I think my dad saw it like four times. I mean, everyone in my family saw it multiple times because we all saw it when it started, and then we saw it again when Billy Joe was doing his appearance in it. So I'm very familiar with the Broadway show.
I saw with me and my sister went for when Billy Joe was in. That was it. And actually, for me, funny enough, I was thinking about this. Green Day not only like got me into the music I love, but I never really went to Broadway before this. So Green Day also
Oh,
got me into Broadway, which is kind of like, way to go, guys. You really opened up my life here. But yeah, I remember seeing with Billy was such a treat. And plus because at the end of the show, they always ended with Time of Your Life and Good Riddance. And then for when Billy's there, he leads with the guitar in front and he's leading the sing along. So it's like, oh,
It's pretty
now
good.
it's just a Green Day concert. But yeah, he played it, and then also right after he played it briefly, Bill, I don't know if you know this, but Davey Havoc of a.k.a. A Fire Inside also played St. Jimmy briefly.
Also
I
briefly
did not.
played it was
I did not know that. Yeah,
Melissa Etheridge briefly played Saint Jimmy as well. So
They
just get. I wow, that's I didn't know either one of those things. That's really cool. What I love hearing though, the story though, is like family and family are involved in this album or the band, and like I love that aspect of it because honestly, it actually plays into the points of the album. Is like there's a total lack of like family in the album, right? He's from a broken home, the quote unquote broken home, with his mom and Brad. I always felt like Jeff, you pointed that out, and I just felt like that's such a clever way to say like, oh, mom's new boyfriend or stepfather or something, mom and Brad. I just thought that was so great. But like this whole album is about like kind of trying to find your family. I love hearing the both of you talk about that there's like a familial element to the album, and that made my day. Jeff, I got into Broadway because of West Side Story. Uh,
Mhm.
we're all from New York. We all know that Channel 13 PBS, they would occasionally play West Side Story on the afternoons on like the weekends, and I would always end up watching it. And that is how I got into Broadway, because of West Side Story.
Nice. I mean, the greatest, right?
I, well, yeah, and that's Sondheim as well. Am I wrong on
Yeah,
that?
it's
Bernstein's,
one of his first things ever. But yeah, it
yeah.
was a
Yeah.
collaboration between him and Rodgers and Hammerstein, right? And then Leonard Bernstein.
Yeah.
It was like it
Yeah.
was sort of like the passing, you know, it was like a generational moment between like kind of the old school Broadway and then and Sondheim. That's why it's so great.
What's even funnier is there's another story where I feel like, why are we still seeing, like, why is this still a relative
Yeah.
story? Yet it still is a relative one. Oh my gosh.
Well, I mean, I think there's
Sorry.
something about, and this is the album fits in here, that stories about being a teenager are universal. Because once you become an adult,
Yes.
people's lives can be very different. That's why there's no TV shows about college, but there's a lot of TV shows about being in high school. Because it is something I think everyone relates to that feeling. I think you know, and whatever your situation was as like a kid, it's like I think that the experience of growing up, becoming a teenager is like definitely a universal thing. I think whether it is West Side Story or this, it's like those are the same themes here, I think, and why it's so appealing across like different generations and like time periods.
Well, the other one I would throw in there is the connective tissue, as I would throw Rent in as well, because I feel like
Oh,
this show owes so much from Rent, which again I didn't know because I hadn't seen Rent when I saw American Idiot, and then when I saw Rent later, I was like, oh wait, this stage looks very similar to the American
yeah.
Idiot. Yeah.
For everybody remember at home, Rent was one of the albums I was going to bring with me to Desert Island. Would have been Rent, because that
Mm,
is a bonkers show. Man, is that show good.
that'd be
Bill,
that's a great desert island show.
you wake up every day in the deserted island and say, "No day but today." You know, this is this is
No day but today. Oh my
um,
gosh.
Bill. We are going to play Holiday, but not just yet, because first we'll talk about the next track.
Well, that makes sense, because honestly, I feel okay. I alluded to earlier, I feel like there's only really 8 songs in this album, because Holiday and Boulevard really are a 1-2 punch. Like, they go together. Like, thematically, there's a lot of, and even then, I don't even think there's a breath between the 2 songs on
No.
the album. They just basically goes right into the next
Yeah,
one.
that like sound
Yeah.
comes in at the end of Holiday.
Yeah.
Boulevard of Broken Dreams. I mean, this is they won a Best Record of the Year the following year for this one when it was a single from the
Hmm.
Grammys of this one. I mean, you know, I we Sam, you brought up Bruce Springsteen before and how important he is, and I think at times Green Day is reaching for Springsteen uh, type of vibes, if you will. And I think this one is probably one of those where it's the Green Day version of what they think maybe a Bruce Springsteen song could be. Um,
I mean, is the word boulevard what's bringing you there?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's well, it's like I think of Philadelphia, and then this one,
Yeah. It's
not being
interesting
specific.
because it's one of the less, I think, like lyrically complex songs, you know, and
Yeah.
I think especially after Holiday, where it's like such a high energy song, has a crazy bridge, so many little pieces of it. You know, there's like really, you know, it's an angry song about, you know, the protester crossing the line, finding something on the other side, but it's like this rage at these people, and then it kind of all falls away and turns into this kind of teenage angst. I'm the center of the world. I'm all alone. Like, and it's a great version of that. But it is like a very, you know, in a way, it's like it's so much simpler
Yeah,
I think in a lot of ways than in all the songs we've heard up until now. It's kind of the first real, like, kind of downbeat of like the album.
yeah, for sure. And like it is simple. It's also again one of the probably why it was such a successful single. It's like you don't need to know anything about this concept album. This could just
Right.
be like exactly what you
Yes.
said.
I think yeah. It
This is
plays
for
on
that.
Smallville when Clark Kent is in the locker room and getting ready to go out and play football by himself, and he is alone. You know, it's like pretty straightforward.
Right. He's
And this is the video. They lean into the emo-iness of like the costumes and the way it's shot. It's got that like grayish blue color to it, right? It's got the kind of that vibe
Mhm.
where, and it just looks, I don't know, it's, yeah, there's morosely walking down the street, and like it's such, Jeff, it's such a funny parallel to, like, when was the last time we saw them walking? That was the When I Come Around video,
Yeah,
where they're walking around the streets of San Francisco flipping phones the other way around.
classic move. Phil, you just brought up the emo-ness of this, and the other thing we can talk
Oh
about
yeah.
as we break down the album again, mentioned
Yep.
earlier, they had costumes for this era. Suddenly, suddenly, Billy Joe had all black button-down t-shirt, bright red tie, and so much eyeliner, so much eyeliner. Um,
And a pretty specific hair look too.
yeah, it's like
That
that.
looking
Yeah,
back at it, it's oh right, like that like kind of like big bowl, really jet black hair. Uh does that I have a question for you guys. You guys are the emo experts. Is do you connect this to emo? I mean, obviously yes, but it's like is when you can because I was just reading this thing with Billy Joe about the new album that came out where he seemed to not really consider the music that followed American Idiot to be emo music. Like, like the My Chemical Romance era, what to him wasn't as emo as other albums that were like coming out before then, I guess. Like, do you and like where do you see, I guess, this fitting into like the punk versus pop punk versus emo milieu, I guess, or spectrum?
I have a very controversial take on all this, where and this, I think, in the advent of the last decade of emo nights and things like that, I learned that what people associated with emo stretched way further than I ever thought it was. Like, I definitely
yeah,
thought, I always thought Green Day was a pop punk band when I was like in it. And then bands like My Chemical Romance were emo because they came out of the emo scene that I was going to shows at. So like I understood where they progressed from. So I was like, oh yeah, this is an emo band. And then they became like the Hot Topic emo band because like they sold the aesthetic. But I think now I definitely think that whatever emo, pop punk, whatever this huge swath of modern music of this era is, it really starts in 94 with Dookie, is like the beginning of that. It's the birth of this. And was there emo before that? Yeah, emo was technically emotional hardcore, the Washington D.C. early '80s scene. And all it was, instead of screaming about politics, you were screaming about problems in your life. So that was
right.
like actually where emo, the word actually came from, and then it just got attached to all this stuff. But now when I look at it, I now think that Blink 182, Green Day, that whole, while they may not be an emo band, what they did
Mm.
affected what became third wave, fourth wave emo in that sense. So
Right.
yes, sure, why not? Let's let's call. I mean, if you're wearing a black shirt and you have a red tie and you have a lot of eyeliner on, you know, it's Avril Lavigne,
It's pretty emo, yeah.
It's
It's
Gerard
pretty,
Way, it's Billy Joe. You know, it's
yeah, it's pretty emo. I mean, it wasn't out of, it's not out of character for Billy Joe to wear a tie, because he would wear a lot, often he wear ties at doing the punk rock shows. He would have, he'd have a tie on. So that's not too far fetched. I think Jeff's got a point, and I agree with him. I feel like the term emo, when you what image do you conjure when you come up with that? It's the black hair. It's what Billy Joe looks like in this album. It's the
Yeah.
ridiculously huge mess of black, jet black hair, the guy liner, the very pale skin, and then thin as a rail, and wearing your sister's jeans. I mean, that's basically what what I imagine whenever I imagine, what the newer version of the Hot Topic, Jeff could point, the Hot Topic version of emo is. Um, I feel like emo, the term, has really just become analogous to alternative. It's the same. It's just kind of lumping people together, which is fine, and that's what people want to do. I still think Green Day. I see them as a pop punk band. Um, I think that's where their roots are. There's elements of emo in there, particularly with this album. The next album, the 21st Century Breakdown. I think they get away from that later and have fully gone back to a punk rock with Saviors has been very much more punk rock based, but there's still elements of like the emo in there. Jeff's right. We go back. Where does emo start? It's the cry kids and hardcore scenes and middle 80s, mid 80s in Washington D.C. Right, we're talking like Rites of Spring. You know, I'm like there you go, Fugazi. There, you know, like that's the root of emo, where emo comes from.
But if you go to an emo night, you're not going to hear Fugazi. You're not going to hear Rites of
No,
Spring. You're barely going to hear Get
no,
Up Kids at this point. You're going to hear Green Day, The Killers, Mr.
yeah,
Brightside. You're going to hear Linkin Park, and it's like,
Blink,
yeah,
yeah,
and you're like, wait, what? And then My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy, etc.
yeah, which it's fine, and that's how you want to lump people together. I don't care anymore how you want to lump people together. I don't like if you want. That's why you see emo. That's fine. I'm not going to gaslight or stage like or try to correct you because I think I'm right and you're wrong, right? Because I might be wrong. I mean, I'm wrong about other things, so it's fine.
Just ask Gen A. They'll tell you what it is.
They'll tell you what it is. They are awfully opinionated, and I'm okay with that because I'm here for more straightforward talk instead of just This has been a fun side quest. I appreciate going on this one. This was a good one. Because, Jeff, this is like an area we've never gone down before. Like actually our defining of the scene. I like that a lot. So thanks, man. Appreciate
Yeah, it was really Billy Joe in the interview. He was talking about emo nights too, and how
Yeah.
he was like confused. It was sort of like he didn't want to be connected to. I think there's someone was asking maybe about Olivia Rodrigo specifically, and he generally was like didn't understand how like the nostalgia factor for like the kind of post American Idiot pop punk music had like turned into emo night stuff. And he was like, you go to these emo nights and like you hear them playing like stuff that's not emo music. So it was pretty funny.
Yeah. Well, we told the story. Well, we did a Blink one, but
Yeah.
to that point, on the third emo night LA, it had gone from a small club in Echo Park to like a bigger club, the Echoplex, and their big get was they got Mark Hoppus to come out and DJ. And I remember Mark Hoppus learning in real time what emo night was because he started with Fugazi's song. He started with
Yeah.
like I think a Jawbreaker, like what he thought emo was.
Yeah.
And he saw the crowd just standing still, and then he's like, Skater Boy by Avril Lavigne, and then everyone's going crazy. He's like, oh, okay. I see what's going on here.
That's funny.
All right.
I I go to emo nights now. I love them. But it's Take It Back Sunday. It's a Hawthorne Heights song occasionally. But I just like what I would love? A Dashboard song. Like that would be fun. Like someone just crank one of those out. Anyway, okay.
Well, Phil, you can write your
So-
letter to your local emo night.
I'm gonna write a letter to myself. Dear Phil, have emo nights with Dashboard.
Phil,
I forget what-
want to play Holiday and Boulevard of Broken Dreams
Sounds
together?
good.
All right, here we go. Track 5, Are We the Waiting? So
Are we? Yeah.
Real quick on the Boulevard. So in the story, he's now by himself in this city, and he's alone, and he's not feeling great. And this song is going to kind of pick up that headspace. I feel like.
So really, the last song is just a full version of Welcome to Paradise.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Why not? Okay, I'm gonna go on a limb. I'm gonna say thematically, the next 3 songs are one song put together. So that'd be Are We the Waiting, Save Jimmy and Novocaine. I'm just gonna throw that together. So there's reasons.
I'm with that. I think that it is the Jesus is coming to the city and basically learns to do drugs, some serious drugs that weren't available to him in his hometown.
Jingletown didn't have jangle,
Yes.
I love Are We the Waiting? It's like it sort of reminds me of like, I don't know, like a Puddle of Mud song, maybe. I don't know. It was like something like it's like very different to me, like sonically, I guess, than some of the rest of the albums. Obviously, you have this kind of like large male chorus kind of joining in, connecting him, to this like, it's a we, not I am waiting. It's we are the waiting. Like some kind of like he's in some kind of like scene now in the city, or kind of can be something bigger. The drums are stripped down, and then obviously like the end of the song, kind of beginning Saint Jimmy, is also one of my favorite parts of the album too, where it's kind of like you're just to this kind of like dramatic sort of like solo angsty thing, and then that kick into the beginning of Saint Jimmy, is just like, yeah, one of my favorite parts of the whole album.
Yeah, I will co-sign that. Yeah, it's this song lulls you into this like because of the sound of it. It's a little slower. It's more thoughtful and it's carrying on that loneliness and like we're waiting for something. Like literally saying we're waiting for something, and we're calling upon the figure who's going to come and change things for us. And that person's about to come in St. Jimmy, which comes in perfectly, like you said. Um, but also this one where like I also like again him going back to the story where this is where we get the rage and love again is brought back here. The rage and love, the story of my life, the Jesus of suburbia is a lie. So self-doubt is coming in. What is he doing? And he's primed for somebody to come in and be a bad influence.
It sure comes in swinging. Yeah, no, the we say in the we are waiting, like it's like we're talking about a generate, like the generation is wait, like it's an algorithm of the algonist of that, and now an algonist, and it's an analogy. Let's go with that because I can't get that right. Waiting for something bigger to happen, right? Like he left suburbia to go to the big city, and he's kind of like, well, I'm still kind of waiting. You're like, what's going to happen here? And then in comes this bombastic intro of St. Jimmy. I mean, I swear to God, this is he makes doing drugs look cool. He really does. Like it's just this cool character who comes in, this like another version of them. Just when everybody's down, here comes,
Right.
Captain Fun coming in,
Phil,
and let's have a good, yeah.
are you saying you enjoy the idea of cigarettes and ramen and a little bag of dope? I am the son of a bitch and Edgar Allan Poe.
I mean,
It's
that
so good.
sort of sounds like me back in college. So yeah, I mean that's not too far off. But no, it like Jeff, you said it really great. And Sam, with you talked about the musicality of Are We Waiting? It's so kind of quiet, right? I mean, like it starts. It's just a drum. It's just Trey on the drum for a little bit. Billy comes in a little bit with a little bit of guitar work, and it slowly starts building to, and then like the choir comes in, um, and then get this bombastic introduction of Saint Jimmy. So like you're creating this gigantic entrance. It's very analogous. I got it right that time. Of like in Rocky Horror, where Frankenfurter's coming down for the first time, right? And you've got that bass drum going, and Brad and Jan are kind of backing up to the elevator, and then it opens, and then there's Frankenfurter, and it's like this amazing moment, right? If for the show, much like when St. Jimmy shows up, it's this amazing, like, watch out, this live wire is coming, and you're about to be entertained for the next 3 minutes, because this is the second time we got to a real true punk song, because American Idiot's first one, this is the second one.
I like the comparison to Frankenfurter. That's really great. I feel that
That's always
deeply.
that's always what I imagine. I feel it. It's yes. I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, oh, this is something to pay attention to. I love this. Yeah, let's do
Yeah.
this.
The Frank, it also like gets to, I think, like in the Broadway show, the actor Tony Vincent, who originated St. Jimmy, they also definitely leaned into the like, I guess we weren't really using the term like non-binary then, but it was like kind of like, cross-dressery, like, this very thin, but like very like, the he was like a total like firecracker and an incredible performer. Also,
Yeah.
I see he'd been like on The Voice and other things, but just like a really like amazing voice and like stage presence. Like sort of like an Alan Cumming kind of like look to him ish, like very tall and thin, like kind of like almost like Gollum-y at points too. But yeah, I mean, just like what a great. I mean, probably like, definitely in my contention for favorite song on the album is Saint Jimmy. And it's like such a rush. And I think after the last two like kind of slower songs, it does like really like convince you that Saint Jimmy is like the coolest character here.
Yeah. No, I it's burned in my head the intro of this character in the show when he pops out the door up there and he's just like
Yeah.
it's like he's up on top of the stage and he's just like sliding down. And it's just like, oh yeah, okay,
I mean,
everything's gonna be
especially when
okay.
it's Billy Joe Armstrong playing him, the audience knows he's about to enter. And I
That's true
remember
too,
people
yeah.
starting to clap and scream like before he was even out, because he's about to come. You know what I mean? And I feel like he was also maybe like yelling backstage, like he was amping himself up like on off stage, and like people were just like going nuts just for his kind of like big entrance up there. It's so good.
Yeah. I also feel like he loves to perform this one too. This is again like seeing him over the
Yeah.
years. Like this is, yeah. They'll go back to the punk of it all. Like this is the pure Billy Joe like experience on this
Yeah.
song. Um,
It's just Billy unhinged. It really is. I mean, because even at the end, I know he loves doing it at the end. Well, it's like an American Idiot. No, it was in Holiday where he would always say the name of the town. So instead of from Anaheim to the Middle East, it was always like the name of the town to the Middle East. It's just, and then this one, I know he, at least whenever I saw it, he would do it. It was it's St. Jimmy, and that's my name at the very end. And he says, and he goes, "Don't you fucking wear it out."
Yeah.
And it was like bam, 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 bam. I mean,
yeah.
it's so great to hear him do it because this character, this song in particular, is just made for Billy to just run around the stage like a madman, which is great. And that's what I expect out of him.
What do you guys think of the interpretation of it of St. Jimmy being a Tyler Durden versus an actual person?
I mean, in the show, obviously they're part of the show is clarifying what's going on, and they take a pretty clear take that he is imagined
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus, who in the show is named Johnny.
Yeah.
Um, I think that it's definitely hinted, it's hinted at in the album. I think, later songs. I don't know if it's as definitive though in the album as in the show.
Yeah.
It feels almost more like something that in the creative process of it, it like occurred. Like I can't imagine that it started that way, I guess. Like, I don't
Right.
feel I like just something about the way Saint Jimmy enters and, this connection to him. I mean, maybe it is about like the kind of Billy Joe as like the alter ego of the performer, or the addict or whatever, but I do think that there's less, I feel like it's like more ambiguous, I think, in a good way in the album, as opposed to like
Yeah.
a definitive kind of answer there.
Yeah, I agree. I think when I first heard the album, I just thought him as another character. But then when I saw the show, I was like, oh, that's interesting too, because then it's like, oh, he goes to the city and he doesn't understand his identity, so he's searching for a new one. And this one is
Right. Yeah. I mean,
there's
there's
a
hints like in Letter Bomb, I think
yeah,
is the main thing, right? Where he
Yeah.
basically Saint Jimmy is a figment of your father's rage and your mother's love. I mean, that's
exactly.
like
Yeah.
hard to get around that one, and and then Homecoming. I mean, it's there, but it's like I don't know. It's like I don't know if it's like started that way, when they were originating this album. But yeah, I don't know.
Ability.
Tyler Durden. Yeah, I think it's Tyler Durden. But
Yeah. When you can go Tyler Durden, you go Tyler Durden. Phil, let's play We Are the Waiting and St. Jimmy.
okay.
Here we go. The next one is called Gimme Novocaine. This is the point of the story where Jesus of Suburbia is discovering drugs because his the St. Jimmy is like drugs rule. Drugs are the best.
Drugs
Yeah.
are, yes, the time for some of all the things to do, Novocaine. Right? That just dulls the pain. It doesn't actually make it go away.
Well, isn't that the point of drugs in general?
Yeah, just to dull the pain. Yeah, make it go. Yeah.
The
It's a
pain of reality,
temporary
yeah.
relief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The throbbing toothache of the mind, like the throbbing toothache of the mind, as he says.
It's my least favorite drug, honestly, Novocaine. Because honestly, you get it done. I have bad teeth, right? So I always got Novocaine because I had to go to the dentist a whole lot, and I always hated it because like I'd get it, and then like half your face doesn't move, and you'd have to deal with that for the next 2 hours. And I love to have coffee, and so it'd be like having to angle your face so that the coffee would fall into your mouth. It's very difficult.
Yeah, the drool situation is not good.
Not good.
This song particularly is one of the ones that I think of the staging of the show every time I listen to it. When it goes into like the guitar bridge, I guess, like later after the A Novocaine, and it kind of goes into this riff in the show. I just remember everyone is standing on stage, and when that happens, suddenly everyone drops, and you realize it transitions from Johnny's story in the city to like some Iraq battlefield, basically. And the rest of it becomes like the middle of this, there's a separate storyline with like one of his friends who joins the army and is serving overseas, and it transitions there and becomes like this like crazy like war scene. And that I get whenever that's like that turn there too, I always think about, and that like big transition there.
Yeah, that fills it out because is that the point where we start getting into like 21 Gun Salute and everything like that? I'm trying to remember. That comes a
21
little
Guns
later.
comes later. I mean, the other thing in
Yeah,
the show is that right there's songs from 21st Century Breakdown that are like
yeah,
incorporated, but I mean they kind of divvy up the songs between these three guys, right? And it's kind of hits the Green Day dramatic triangle of the three of them.
yes,
But it kind of like has like the kind of this plot from the album and then this kind of like soldier story, kind of like maybe how people would interpret it uh politically. And then there's a third story of the friend who's kind of left behind in the hometown, and he takes some of the songs too. But the soldier stuff, obviously at the time, is like very like, politically bracing. But yeah, that was one of the that's like the first time we kind of go overseas, like in the
right.
story in the middle of Give Me Novocaine. Um
Yeah, that's right. I completely forgot about that whole storyline in the show. Now it's all coming back. Should have seen it
there's
more
also
than once.
there's a B-side called Favorite Son that they
Yeah,
put in between Boulevard of Broken Dreams and Are We the Waiting, that they use to kind of like launch like that story of Tunney like going to join the army.
but for here we have Jimmy and going down the bad path here with Saint Jimmy. Not the bad path, the path that won't really bring him in the righteousness he's seeking. But never fear, the next character is about to show up. Because this goes right in again. This song, and then they've done this a few times. We've seen it's like kind of a softer, slower song, and then something out of the gate's gonna like hit you in the face. With what's her name? Um, She's a Rebel is the next song.
It's
Yes.
I feel like She's a Rebel and Extraordinary Girl are the dynamic connection between it. Like looking at it, I'd lump Are We With a Waiting, Saint Jimmy, and Novocaine all together. I also think it's and then put She's a Rebel and Extraordinary Girl together. I think it's funny though that like the last line of Novocaine is "Give me Novocaine," and then in comes the guitar part where she comes in as a rebel. I'm always like, is she now the Novocaine? Like, is she gonna take over where Novocaine left off? Because like, here's her entrance. Like, give me Novocaine. An intro. What's her name?
Yeah, I
Just
think like the tension between her and Jimmy and the drugs is clearly like it's almost like a pattern recurring of like
Yeah,
the father's rage and the mother's love now remanifests in his adult life as, Saint Jimmy, this addiction manifested, and like the possible love from like what's her name. So it makes sense, I think, that they're like so glued together. In the show, they kind of like take an angle where he's met what's her name by now, and they do drugs together, right? That's like kind of
right.
it's not as it's sort of hinted, I think, in the album in different places of her drug use or not, or whatever cool stuff she does. But it's the Give Me Novocaine is also when they meet in the show, and they like wrap each other in this like and they're like heroin ecstasy, and like I think they
Yeah,
float off a bed or something. I don't know, but yeah.
yeah. But the most important thing I think for our main character is she comes in and she, the song and this the bridge is she sings the revolution, the dawning of our lives. She brings liberation that I just can't define. Like she's the one who I feel like is coming in. At least my interpretation always was she's coming in and being like, if Saint Jimmy is like, fuck the world, let's do drugs. She's like, fuck the world, let's save the world. Kind of like her drive, right? And she comes in and presents this new idea to our character, and he's completely smitten by her on this song. It goes from She's a Rebel to Extraordinary Girls, where we know he's completely smitten by her.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
It,
great like sorry, fuck over it.
no, you go.
I was gonna say it's a great like the like kind of like ironic presentation of her, obviously as like what's her name, like, oh, what's her name? It's like she's clearly been around, break out the Trojans. Yeah, at the same time, he says it bluntly, she's a symbol of resistance, right? She is like kind of the political heart of like the piece. And it's like then you get like the lyric of like the idea of like the holding on the heart like a hand grenade, which obviously is like behind you, Jeff. Like it became
Right.
like the cover, like but it's such a great metaphor or whatever, every symbol too, I think, of what's happening with her and Jimmy, right? I mean, it's like she's what's holding him from exploding
Right.
in this story. And then as we see later, when when she lets go, it all does fall apart. He
Right.
doesn't have to go. But it is like that piece, it's such an evocative image, and I think it's like such a cool way of thinking about their relationship too, where it's like she can't hold on to him like forever, right? But she is gonna hold on as like tight as she can.
I
Yeah.
love that you brought back in the political side because there's even a reference back to Holiday. Jeff just said it, like that it's the dawning of our lives. That's a direct
Mhm.
line in Holiday. It's
Hmm.
fun that we get to go back to that a little bit, and bring in, I don't know, some more structure for Jesus of Suburbia. Some like you said, Jeff. Like it's yeah, the world's kind of fucked, but still worth fighting for. So like, start fighting for it. You know, that makes it's funny how that makes her a rebel, is to actually realize it's worth fighting for. That's rebellious. I love it.
Well, we'll get into more of the Rebel Girl reference, is a reference to Bikini Kill,
That's
Rebel
right.
Girl, and Kathleen Hanna, who will soon be on the album with us for a second. But yeah, going back to the cover, like Sam said, like I love that's exactly it. Like she's holding on to him right now, trying to keep him from exploding, trying to bring him with her to this place that I think he truly wants to go, but will he be able to? Is the question. The next song is Extraordinary Girl. So we're kind of sticking with this now. Very interesting lyric stuff. I always think about how she's an extraordinary girl in an ordinary world. Years later, we'll have another Green Day song called Ordinary World, and then Billy Joe will make his major acting debut as the lead of a movie called Ordinary World. So
Hmm.
Ordinary World, very big in the Billy Joe uh, universe.
I think the song also starts with that like kind of like I don't even know how to describe it, sort of like if you were like on a TV show and you had to like show you were in the Middle East or like Arabia, it's like this is the music that would play like in the background, right? It's like has a sort of like, like these like percussives, but it's like very like kind of like mysterious before getting back into like more of the Green Day sound. Um, it's a part of what reminded me as a kid also getting really into. I think it was around when like the Beatles CDs were all remastered and like in
Yeah.
that big black box and those like in the kind of the iTunes like age, getting really into like Sergeant Pepper, and this is one of those like transitions here like reminds me of the Sergeant Pepper concept album version where there are these little things that it's not just the songs are speaking to each other. There's like little like transitional things that are like sounds coming in from other worlds, but kind of like playing with like the theatricality of it, I guess, or like the
Hmm.
different things kind of popping in, kind of building out this like different like symphonic language. And this to me is like that kind of like more Sergeant Peppery kind of like song here to me always.
Yeah, it's definitely here. I think you're hitting a nail on the head here. It's a song that sounds a little different than everything else for sure. It's also the change in point of view because it's really looking at her now, right, as well. So we're kind of
Yeah.
like we're and we're looking at her and her reaction to the situation they're in. By the end, it's like we get this very evocative verse. She sees the mirror of herself, an image she wants to sell to anyone willing to buy. Um, you can sit there and take that apart. Like, is she trying to find her place? Is she trying to figure out where she belongs? Is she literally selling herself? Like, all these questions can come up. Um, but in this part of the story, if her and Jesus of Suburbia are together, you know, in the chorus, you got some days he feels like dying, and some days it's not worth trying, and they both are fine, and she gets so sick of crying, like the issues are bubbling up between them, and is she going to be able to hold on to his heart much longer? starts to come up.
Which, and the answer is no.
No,
I don't think she would hold on. No, I don't think it's gonna happen. And Sam, I do like once we get to the end of the song, we get into the, like you said, the Sergeant Pepper transitional. Like, hey, new thing coming in. What's this new thing coming in? We have a little, I don't know, taunt from audibly getting told no one likes me. Well, thanks very much, record, for telling me no one likes me. I appreciate that.
Yes, a big hit moment for my family was this that piece there. The nobody likes you, everyone hates you, they're all out without you, having fun. The first time we hear that at the end here.
Yeah.
This song also interesting in the show. They do split this character up. So the Extraordinary Girl is a separate character
Right.
from What's Her Name in one of the other storylines, and they kind of use that the fact that the musical language is so different to kind of like place it in the other storyline of like the the army vet character and his like recovery.
Well, after an Extraordinary Girl, you need something explosive. So the next song is Letter Bomb, which, as we just said, has the nobody likes you, everyone left you, they're all out without you, having fun. On the album, and it's actually sang by Kathleen Hanna of Bikini Kill La Tigra. Very cool.
It's super cool that she's on there. It's super cool.
Yeah. She's hilarious. I saw La Tigra 2 summers ago in their reunion show, and
Yeah.
she was on stage, and like she's married to a Beastie Boy, I believe, one of the Beastie Boys, forget which one. And then but the Beastie Boy was like in front of me, like in the crowd while she was playing, and then she started like telling this like story about Gwen Stefani. But she did that thing where when you're a celebrity, you're not supposed to actually say what actually happened and name names. But she's like, "Fuck it, I can do whatever I want." And I watched her tell this like terrible story about famous people, and I caught the Beastie Boy just going like this, shaking his head like, "Oh no, here we go again," which I think summed everything up to me. This song, oh, sorry, Phil, go ahead.
Adam. She's married to Adam of the Beastie Boys.
Yes. Yeah. It was my only time I've ever seen a Beastie Boy in person, and he looked like dad. I guess all Beastie Boys eventually go that way.
Yeah, that's they're getting older. The remaining two are getting older, and so am I.
So this
anyway.
this one's interesting because I also feel it's What's Her Name's point of view, and Billy Joe had said he had written this with the intention it to be sung by a woman voice.
Interesting. Okay.
So in the show you definitely get that, because when you put it in her voice, then it's like, okay, now you're starting to see her kind of disenchantment with the city, and the American idiots have taken over, and the lost cause it's starting to feel like.
If I remember correctly, also in the liner notes on the CD, this song is presented as her letter. I mean, obviously it's called Letter Bomb.
Yeah.
And the story seems to be she's writing this in a letter to Jesus, and that is the letter bomb she's sending to her love. But it was also like written like it was like a letter from What's Her Name that was like the lyrics like were appearing as.
I just love the declaration. You're not the Jesus of suburbia, and that Saint Jimmy's just a figment of your father's rage and your mother's love, like you said before, Sam. And like it's like this is the realization song, I guess, really of what's happening and what has happened throughout the whole story, kind of like, oh, narrator's kind of crazy, much like narrator in Fight Club, imagining Tyler Durden. So there you go.
And right after
alert.
those,
No one's read Fight Club or seen the movie. Spoiler alert, a little late, but that's okay. I mean, the movie, it's not like the movie just came out. It's
I think you're in the clear.
And then 25 years, it's a 25-year rule,
Yeah.
Whew. Yeah, all right. So we're safe. It's a safe space to talk about freely about Fight Club. Okay, good. I wanted to make sure we were able to do that. All right.
Yeah. And after the lyrics you quoted, she then even kind of gets back to the thematics. This made me the idiot of America.
Yeah.
Right. Like she's kind of declares here she's the American idiot. So we kind of see all like in that one chunk, all like basically the thematic language of the whole album comes back. Right. Between St. Jimmy, They Did America, Son of Rage and Love. In the show, in the soundtrack, they basically cut out all the music at that point. so she can really clearly say what's going on.
Yeah.
In the album, he sings, he's singing through this song. It is just, he is just going through there. And you really have to be kind of listening in a way to pick up on like if I don't know, if the Tyler Durden is like too subtle or whatever, it's like that's the piece that's like he doesn't stop to really hammer it home like the way they do in the show soundtrack. But yeah, I love that piece. I love how it all comes back here after a song that's also very not much like it's very much from her point of view, and you have this kind of like angry song about the like the emptiness of the protest movement. I mean, it's in a way this is one of the also the most political songs too.
Yeah.
It's not. And I think the other piece of it though is remember is like where it starts with where have all the bastards gone, and then it turns into where will all the martyrs go when the virus cures itself, which obviously, so close to the 9/11 and the war on terror thing, another very loaded idea of, what, when you believe like in freedom or like liberalism or whatever, and you're protesting or fighting, are you actually willing to fight for that, right? I mean, she's the person who seems to be willing to fight for it, and it's just finding disappointment all around her, right? I mean, that connects back to the holiday too, of the idea that the protesters have crossed the line to find the money's on the other side, and now she's standing here by herself. I mean, those are the bastards she's looking for, right? Or like the fighters, but they seem to like all be gone now.
Yeah, she herself is on the boulevard of her broken dreams. But yeah, anyway, it's that line where will the martyrs go when the virus cures itself, and where will we all go when it's too late? I mean, that sticks with me over the years. Like even watching as like we've seen protests over the last few years, a lot of it goes into this just like a lot of like yelling on Instagram and being like, look at this chart we made, infographic we made, so you understand. And it's like what's that doing? Is it doing anything, or are you just sharing out the same people? And I don't know. I think about that a lot when I hear that line. So look at you, Green Day, seeing how the world is going. Bill, I'd like to play Letter Bomb, but here's the twist.
Okay, I'm ready.
We're gonna play the Broadway original recording version.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right, I'll allow that. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, here's Letter Bomb from the Broadway musical American Idiot. Our next track is track 11, Wake Me Up When September Ends.
Wait, can I say something about the Broadway Letter Bomb track?
Please.
Which there's like a thing that I always like Mandela, I guess not Mandela effect, I just misremember, which is in the Broadway version, there's very little dialogue in the show. I think it's really just like there's some snippets that are like Johnny, who's like Jesus of Suburbia, like diary entries he gives a few times, and it's really just sung through. But there is one thing that they add in the middle of What's Her Name, which is What's Her Name does shout "Wake up" at Johnny at one point, which I remember always disappointed. I just feel like it could be Billy Joe could scream that in the middle of the song, and that would be a great moment. But we can continue.
Well, there's also the song on Warning, Wake Up.
That's right.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe he's already what's the name of that? Is it Waiting? What's the name of that song?
I've been waiting
yeah.
and left. Yeah.
Wake up. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you're right. It kind of combines there. This song, very important, because without it, we wouldn't have the meme that everyone posts on September 30th, October 1st, saying, hey, someone remember to wake up the guy from Green Day, which was really the intention of this song. All along.
It's the whole point of the song.
Dan, you mentioned it earlier. This is a very personal song for Billy Joe that just happened to come out the right time. It's about his dealing with his father's passing over the years. And his father died September 1st, and apparently the thing he said to his mom was like, wake me when September ends. So he's kind of carried that with him all his life and put it in the song. In fact, I read that he actually had written this song to be on the Greatest Hits album, International Super Hits, that had come out a few years prior, but he wasn't ready to put it out there yet. He felt too vulnerable about it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like, he does something in the lyrics too, of going from the 7 years to the 20 years
Yeah.
that has gone so fast, right? I mean, it's like it kind of takes you like it's about, it's kind of this universal thing I think about like grief and like mourning, but also is literally just the dates that when he was writing this, right? Going
Yep.
from, when I think he says that it's basically when he left home was 7 years after his father died. It was when he ran away, ran to go be a punk star. And then 20 years later, from when his father died, is when he was writing American Idiot. So it's both, and I think in that, changing of like the timeline too, like says something so universal about grieving, but also the inescapability of it, which I think obviously connected it to. It's funny. It obviously became this kind of like 9/11 song. I think to anyone listening to it, where those numbers wouldn't make any sense, but also make sense. Just like the idea could be 7 years to 20 years later after something horrible happening, you could still feel like one song that's being sung. I think is like why the song like connects like so universally. I mean, because it's so specific, I think.
Yeah, and they leaned into that in the music video. It's basically like there's like a short film attached
Oh
to it
yeah.
about this like young couple, and she's upset with him. She's like, "How could you do this?" And he's like, "I thought you'd understand." And then it turns out he enlisted for the military, and then it's like him off in war, like potentially in Iraq, and seeing action, and she's back at home waiting, wondering if he'll come home after September, I guess. But yeah, so they completely lean into that 100%. But yeah, it's I think it's a remarkable song about grief. Like you mentioned, the time passing is so powerful because like once you have that moment of grief and that tragedy, it's just with you forever, and you're just always going to be counting the years go by. It also makes me wonder too when because this year they are going to do this stadium tour where they are going to be celebrating the new album Saviors, but they're also going to be celebrating 30 years of Dookie, 20 years of this. What happens when he sings this now on the 20-year anniversary of this song? Does he change it to 40 years has gone so fast, or is there just a little more emphasis on 20 years has gone so fast since American Idiot came out?
Yeah.
A lot of stuff happening there. A lot of stuff for him to play with, if he so chooses.
His dad died the same day as Joey Ramone. I don't know why I learned that, but I did.
No?
Do you do you guys feel like this is the song that sticks out? Like it feels out of place on the album to some degree.
I think to some degree it does. I think that it feels and it feels like the least connected to the narrative, I think. I think American Idiot is like a thesis statement for the themes at the beginning, even though it doesn't necessarily feel like, oh, this is telling you something about the story. I think everything else very clearly fits in musically. But I also think that this is Jesus of Suburbia's story. I think
Yeah.
this is what we're meant to take away as his same thing and bringing it back to Billy Joe and like like this the the grief there as his kind of like motivating thing. But I do think it's like, I mean, obviously Green Day, for all their pop punk triumphs, he really knows how to write a ballad. I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, as good as anyone in the world. And I think that this is like the ballad. And it's interesting in the show, there's songs in 21st Century Breakdown, including 21 Guns actually
Right.
plays before Wake Me Up When September Ends and becomes, or maybe it's right before Letterbomb. It's like it's in the same area, the same time, kind of space. And it's like, in a way, 21 Guns almost sounds more like an American Idiot song, I think, than Wake Me Up When September Ends does. It
Right.
has the kind of like the full orchestrations and this kind of like big epic sounds and this concept album like vibe. And it's like, but it is like it's like a power ballad, and this feels more closer of like a more stripped down ballad
Hmm.
to me.
I think emotionally it fits. I mean, she's what's her name is gone. She sent him the letter bomb. She's broken up with him. Everything he's been trying to do has been a failure. And the next song, being Homecoming, is him returning home
Mhm.
back to Jingletown. So whether it's directly connected lyrically, because of the point in the story, I feel like it hits that emotion really hard. And there is definitely grief here that on the love story level, he's realizing he lost this a strong extraordinary girl, and this experiment of trying to get out of hometown, going to the city, and becoming Saint Jimmy is a failure, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
he's
It's funny, Jeff, you telling me I didn't know that about the he was going to originally put it as part of the Grace Hits album. Like, oh, okay, so it does seem it because I always felt it felt a little out of place, um, but thematically still kind of fit. It felt like it's funny. I always thought it felt like, oh, I have this song, and I can insert it here, kind of thing. Versus like having had a story, like oh no, we can. This part of the story is what I'll make a song out of. This was like, oh, off the shelf and in you go. Always kind of felt that way. But okay, all right. I figured I would ask you guys, see if you guys how you guys felt about that.
or Phil, are you saying you don't want to play this?
I'm saying if you would like to play it, we can play it.
Excellent, because we're playing it. Here is Wake Me Up When September Ends. All right, Homecoming is the penultimate track on the American Idiot album. It's our second suite.
Mhm.
So just when you think you're about to get to the end of the album, you're gonna get hit with another almost 10-minute song.
You'd think I wouldn't like it because it's another 10 minutes long. But actually, no, again, I like these because they're a bunch of songs put together. I like these ones. As a 10-minute song. Yeah, so we're going home, huh? We tried, didn't work out. We're gonna go home. How do you feel about that?
I mean, there's a way I think that like obviously you guys are talking about it connects to a lot of the trying to get out of the hometown emo pop punk songs. I think the Homecoming to me also feels very Broadway. You know, it's almost like a
Mm.
a trope, I guess, of like the coming back. But the Lin-Manuel Miranda is in the Heights ends with a song
Yeah,
called Home. Very similar to this song. It's like not surprising. I mean, obviously, like the tragic, Fiddler on the Roof ends with them leaving home, but it's often like the Wizard of Oz kind of like full circle story of coming back home and learning that it is like a pretty archetypal song. And it's interesting that it ends. I mean, I guess it's sort of like a false ending in a way. I mean, there is the triumphant end of this with that kind of the singing about the homecoming, followed by that last, screeching, nobody likes you, everyone hates you, they're all out there having fun. And like those percussives come at the end too. It does feel like it could be the end. And obviously there's one more song. And to me, that's where it kind of like lets you, not feel like it's almost like a cheesy ending to it,
yeah,
But I love all the pieces of this song so much. I mean, to me, it's like when I learned that it was like this is like the very kind of the first song I wrote specifically for this, and that Trey Cool wrote his piece, which is maybe my favorite song on the album. I don't know, like it's like my
yeah.
personal favorite, Rock and Roll Girlfriend, and then Mike Dirnt's like Nobody Likes You, and it's like finally we get to hear them. It's like
Yeah,
there's so many great every moment part of this song to me is like there's another fun, great thing. I mean, obviously beginning with like kind of this, the now that Jesus has like realized he is Saint Jimmy or whatever, he's made this connection, like Jake Simone's private suicide. He's able to kind of shed that character and that figment and then kind of make his like return home. But I love those pieces from them so much. Like, I mean, I think the McDermott section speaks to that kind of the base thing of like I'm stuck here, I'm trapped on the couch. It is almost like the kind of like what he was running away from. How the Trey Cool piece fits in, I have no idea. It's just so good. And then again in the liner notes, again, it's like it's someone else's handwriting, and then it's like I think it's like a postcard maybe from this character like Tunny, who is like escaped, or it's like I don't know really. I don't know what you're meant to take away from it. In the show, there's like a thing that's like his ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend, but it's like that doesn't solve the album's question for me. And like the sax and the guitar, it's like such a great wacky moment, I think, toward the end of it. That yeah, I mean, I love this whole every piece of this suite I love so much.
yeah, I agree. The Trey Cool one stands out just because, like, one, I didn't know Trey Cool could sing like this. because up to this point, it was just I'm all by myself is what I've gotten from him, from Dookie. But yeah, I love everyone getting their own moment in this.
Yeah.
So the homecoming to me can be kind of like you go on this odyssey and you don't necessarily find what you're looking for, but then like you come back home and you realize everyone is dealing with being an American idiot in their own way. So maybe the Trey Cool is just somebody in the hometown who's in a band and he's got a rock and roll life and another rock and roll girlfriend and another ex-wife and a rock and roll house. Like, he's just got a
Yeah.
kid in New York in the back. It's just like how do you live in this idiocy? Because there's a very subtle part where he's like when he says, "So get off my case." Very
Yeah.
subtly, you hear "Don't want to be an American idiot" is reprised by Billy Joe from the beginning. So it's like you
Yeah.
always got to be fighting this, right? No matter where.
He's also saying, I haven't had a smoke or drink in over 24 days or whatever. It's like, it's clearly he's connected somehow to what's been happening, but has either like missed the lesson or it is, but it's like he's like jettisoning it out of this thing, and it's like you don't have to be so upset about, I guess, being a drug addict or like doing like partying. Like it's like at the end of this whole road, it's like he's still like, I love being in Green Day. It's like that's like I don't
Yeah.
have any problems with this.
Well, and and then Mike Dern's dealing with his way. Like for 10
Yeah.
cups of coffee, I'm thinking like he's just sitting there trying to figure it out. And like, yeah,
Yeah.
that line always uh hits me pretty hard. Just sitting there with your 10th cup of coffee. But yeah, we also so real quick, Phil, we got our parts here, right? We got part one is the
Yep.
death of St. Jimmy. Then we have part two is East 12th Street. And then part three, Nobody Likes You, the Mike Dirnt part. And then Rock and Roll Girlfriend by Trey Cool. And then We're Coming Home Again is the finale. How do you feel about the suicide of St. Jimmy, Phil? It's
Uh,
my own in the state of mind, it's my own private suicide.
yeah, it's just I it's a good it's a nice mental challenge to try to figure out how to make all these parts kind of work together. And I think ultimately they come together in the sense of growing up. Like St. Jimmy dies because I don't need him anymore. Right. I don't need that's not the side I want to be. I don't want the I think that's like where the connection it's funny, like Trey coming in and singing is hilarious, right? Because I like when he does the New York thing, that's hilarious. But like I think it's the connective tissue back to not doing drugs again to St. Jimmy. Like we don't need that lifestyle. Yeah, like he's like, get off my case. I've been sober for 20 whatever amount of day it is, but good for him to get to the 22-day mark, whatever it is. Um, I think it's a group of characters who are realizing, kind of what life's really about, and for them individually. And I think it kind of comes together that's why at the end it's we're coming home. We are coming home. It's not just Jesus by himself. It's a collective coming home and to realizing, well, 'cause earlier we talked about where home is where the heart is, and that's different for everybody, right? And I think this song is solidifying that you go through all you have to go through you have to be a kid and make mistakes and do bad things and do wrong things to learn from them. And I think that's the point of this song is that you have to go out, make your mistakes, do the dumb things, hang out with St. Jimmy for a while. Hopefully, you survive. But then you get to the point where it's time to come home and you realize what home is for you. And I love how they're all coming together. That's why I feel like even though he talks about we're all basically you're gonna all send me my love a letter bomb, you're gonna visit me in hell. We're the ones going, but we're going home. So wherever our own home is, it's gonna vary for everybody and be a little different.
Yeah. I mean, the last piece, the here they come marching down the street, right? I mean, to your
Yep.
point, it's like it is this, in the show, it becomes like these veterans returning from war, literally, in addition to the other
Yeah.
characters kind of coming back. But always, I do think that yeah, it is like this, everyone has been disparate, and now there's this kind of like generational return home to figure out what they're going to do now.
Really,
That's what I think. That's
I,
what I
I
think, Jeff.
yeah, I agree. 100%. I also what I always liked about right before he says that St. Jimmy uh commit suicide, it comes after St. Jimmy, you know, is still kind of like on his old shit, and he says, "We're fucked up, but we're not the same, and mom and dad are the ones you can blame." And it's like, and it's almost like Jesus Suburbia is like, "No, I'm gonna stop blaming my parents. This is
Hmm.
not their fault, and you're wrong, Jimmy. Now go kill yourself." Like,
Yeah.
he's kind of like realizing that maybe he isn't the son of raging love as like he thought he was. Maybe that's the wrong place to be putting how he ended up here. And yeah, now it's time to come home and forge your
Yeah.
own path.
And of course, right after Jimmy's suicide, yeah, nobody cares, right? That's the
Right.
nobody cares, nobody cares. Yeah, it's like it is like this whatever his kind of angst about his parents. It is maybe he's finally learning the lesson that nobody cares. Like, it's time to grow up. You have to stop blaming other people.
Exactly. Uh, there's also and I smashed my phone, which is again very prescient because it's in 2004. The phone I didn't feel like was as much of a problem because we are pre-iPhone era, and
Right.
then but now it kind of ends with like we're coming home again. No, fuck you, just go. I don't care. Smash my phone. I don't care. Smash my phone. Disconnecting here.
Just gonna, I kind of miss that action of like slamming a phone down. Like
Yeah.
that's just something kids today just don't know how good that felt. Slamming a phone down when you were just done with somebody. Like you can't like angrily hit a button. Yeah, I guess you could. I kind of just did it. So the YouTube folks got to see me angrily hit a button. um, but nothing better than just slamming a phone down, walking away.
Yeah, you can do it with your iPhone too, but then you're gonna be unhappy with your
What?
cracked screen.
Yeah, you need to get a new iPhone. Yeah, exactly.
All right, so we come to the end. No one likes you. Everyone left you. They're all out without you having fun. This could be the ending, but it's not because we have an
Nope.
epilogue.
We do have an epilogue. It's bookend. Like, remember how I said earlier? There's like American Idiot is a set piece, and then we get into the big song of Jesus Suburbia. I feel like like you just said, you even used the word epilogue. At the end of the story was Homecoming, but not quite. We're gonna have a little extra, just another like bookend set piece to the end.
Well, the last song is called "What's Her Name," and it is a song of a little bit of regret, a little bit of pining, a little bit longing for this woman who came into our Jesus's life at one point, and we're down the it's down the line, and he can't even remember her name. That's why it's what's her name, right?
Mhm.
But he still can't. He's trying to forget her, right? I made a point to burn all the photographs. She went away. I took a different path, but he still can't help but wonder how what's her name has been.
This is the most indirectly sad song because I feel like he can't even remember her name, and I feel like that's really sad. I feel like she left such a mark on him that he can't. Um, but I do love that he's like forgetting you, but not the time. So like he has learned from this experience greatly,
Yeah,
but so sadly he can't remember her name. And I feel like I'm like, oh, like nothing really, no name. Like what if I just like Sally? Is it Sally? Like can I just throw names at you until we figure out what her name was? Um, it's just something. I don't know. It's just indirect. There's such a resigned somberness to this song, like looking back on life, and that I really feel like it is arguably the saddest song on the album, even though we've gone through all the others. I feel like there's such a sadness here.
Yeah.
but go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's sad to me. It reminds me in weird like I think the word photograph with Green Day, it's hard not to think about Good Riddance.
Yeah,
Like I
Mhm.
think there's a weird parallels here, I think too, of like this like it's you are looking back and remembering, but you can't, but you also don't want to, and I think that's what's painful about it and sad. It's like it's not like about nostalgia or feeling positively. It's like this, like remember how hard it is to remember, both like and because you can, but also because you don't want to.
yeah, and and it's not just like a song about regret, because he actually talked about how the regrets are just useless in his mind. Like the regret is not even enough for this. It's just kind of, yeah, this very sad realization that this person had an effect on his life, and he will never see her again. He'll never know where she went. Um, yeah, it's an interesting way to end it, because it's like this whole journey is like ultimately was like about this person who you know cross paths with at a very important point in your life, and like you go your separate ways, and ultimately American Idiot is kind of like we're left with this like reflection on this, and kind of haunted by it.
I wonder if that's a bigger statement on the what we're facing. You know, we're gonna look back 20 years from now and like have regret a lot of the decisions we've made as a country. I mean, this like in the bigger sense. Like I don't know. It could be that could be the analogy he's trying to make.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you go from this kind of like angry, triumphant ending of Homecoming to this like reflective thing, but also there is a time has passed. You know, I
Yeah,
think that's why it have to me kind of earns its spot as the last piece of the album, right?
Mm.
Is that it's like there is this implied distance that makes it a true coda of like this day and like years. You don't know how long it's been, right? I mean, it's like but clearly enough time has passed. He's forgotten her name. I guess if she ever had one or not, but I think it lets you kind of fill in like where is he now? How long has it been? Is he just some normal suburban man, you know, living his life? And I think it rounds out the whole story in this like very like poetic way, and like in a cinematic way too, I think.
yeah. No, yeah, this could definitely be like he has a family now, and he's got a like, suburban house of his own, and he's on the porch, and the sun is setting, and this is what he's thinking about. Like 20 years ago when I tried to save America with what's her name. Let's definitely play this one because it's the coda. Here is what's her name, and that is the album American Idiot. Bill,
Yes.
do you have any questions?
I'm filled with them. All right, Jeff. Um, these are going to be kind of complicated questions. I actually think these are going to be very hard. What, Jeff, do you think is the best song on the album?
Phil, the best song is Jesus of Suburbia.
Yep.
Uh, it's the song I think of when I think of this album, and it just it's still when I listen to it today. It's like listening to it the first time. It just
Yeah.
grabs my attention in such a way.
Sam, what about you? What do you think is the best song on the album?
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably would agree. I want to just take your answer. I love the suite at the end also. That's more like a personal favorite. I think that Jesus Suburbia is encapsulates like the project
Yeah.
entirely in its
Mm.
own thing. And it has its own story within the song. It has all the sounds that you want. But maybe American Idiot is the best song. I mean, that is like the fact that it is now like somehow was able to touch such a nerve 20 years later, just them
Mm.
changing the word redneck agenda to MAGA agenda and set off this. I mean, you'd think that people would totally like, roll their eyes at that, right?
Right.
Because it's just like what a stupid, you know, it's like how many thousands of celebrities have we heard say something about Trump or whatever? It's like it's totally falls
Right.
on deaf ears. But something about that song and the like punk spirit of it, but also the anger and the political charge, like everything about that clearly has like totally beyond stood the test of time, I think. So maybe that is the
So
runner up, I guess.
you
Yeah.
guys say so you're gonna go with Jesus Suburbia as your final answer with American Idiot as a close second?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Well, it's good to steal answers from Jeff because Jeff's right. It's Jesus of Suburbia is the best song on the album. I mean, it's just it's how many times, Jeff, I've told you like I hate long songs. I do. I hate long songs. But that song is bonkersly good. Like it is. It's and Sam, you said it really great. It summarizes the project. And I think that's a really great way of putting it. I think that's why it is the best song on the album. Jeff, let's go the other end of the spectrum. What is the skipping song? What song are you going to skip?
You know, if I'm listening to it its entirety, I can skip Are We the Waiting? I was thinking
Okay.
give me Novocaine, but I need a separation between Saint Jimmy and She's a Rebel. That's the only reason it stayed.
That's fair. All right. Sam, what about you? What do you think is the skip song, the song you're gonna skip?
I mean, I kind of just want to defend Are We the Waiting now. So I don't know how it's like Saint Jimmy is not as good without Are We the Waiting. So I
No,
would,
it's yeah, it's true. I mean, also keep in mind when we say skip, a lot of times like an album like this, you wouldn't really skip any song
You
this
wouldn't,
album.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think I'd skip um Extraordinary Girl. I think we get it. I think it's like you get it with She's a Rebel,
Yeah.
and it's the better song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I unfortunately my skip is a casualty of being overplayed. Um, I just can't get through Wake Me Up when September ends anymore. I just can't do it. I've heard it so many times that I'm at the point where I'm like, "Boop," and we're moving on. I just can't do it. It's a great song. Just I've reached that point, guys, where I'm like overexposed and I just can't do it anymore. All right, Jeff, what do you think is a song people are sleeping on?
I think they are sleeping on what's her name, the final song.
What's her name? That's a good choice. That's a good choice.
It's too
Sam, what about you?
sad to be forgotten.
Well, it's it's funny because it's the last song, so you think I'd have like automatically have emphasis, but it's like it's after all these like big, huge, bombastic songs, and you get this kind of really, it's a quiet song. It's got this kind of country twang to it, and it's just a very simple thing that just kind of completes the thought at the end. So I there you go. I defended your pick. There you are. Sam, what do you think is the sleeper song?
I mean, Rock and Roll Girlfriend within Homecoming. It's my favorite. Not, no one celebrates it except for
Homecoming with
Trey Cool
um
fans. Yeah, just no,
yeah,
just this the piece of Rock and Roll
oh,
Girlfriend inside Homecoming. It's my
so we're gonna
sleeper.
you got extremely specific.
Yes,
So I'm gonna write rock and
those 45
all
seconds.
right. Well,
It is the right answer because it might be one of the best 45 seconds of Green Day's entire catalog. So
this is very true. I mean, it is actually it's I actually think Homecoming in its entirety is
Yeah.
the sleeper song. It just particularly when it gets compared against just Suburbia and then of the hits, I feel like really you could possibly take Jesus of Suburbia and Homecoming and just put that out together as a 1-2 piece, and you kind of get a story out of it. You kind of it's almost there. So for me, it's Homecoming is the sleeper track. Good choices. I mean, we are all over the board. We're actually all throughout the album, which is a lot of fun. Actually, no, I take that back. All of us, the sleeper song is all the back half. So there you go. I should not be surprised with that, yet I sort of am.
we're not the
All
play
right,
the hits crowd, you know.
which sometimes we are, but not today. Today we played nearly the entire album. That's what we did today. I love that. All right, let me get through a couple things. Folks at home, hello on YouTube, hello again. People listening to us on Spotify, also hello. You just can't see me wave at you. Remember that we have some social media. We've got TikTok, we have Instagram, Facebook, and Threads. As I've already noticed or explained, you guys, we have YouTube, we have Spotify. So remember, if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe so that you can follow us and hit notifications so you'll be told next time we drop an album. Drop an album, Jeff. We should drop an album. Drop
You made the
episode.
promise. Yeah.
I did. And then hold that one thought. And then also, guys, we have a shop on TeePublic. They're going to search Millennial Diner Podcast to find all the great work that my wife, our executive producer, has put together. For example, if you were actually watching on the YouTube, Jeff is wearing our shirt. Jeff, say hi till they see you.
Hi, it's here. Here's the shirt. It's a coffee mug instead of a heart.
Oh, that's awesome.
Very clever she is. She's extremely clever. More clever than any of us. And that's true. So yeah, do search Millennial Diner Podcast on TeePublic. Jeff, if we were gonna make an album, we're gonna drop an album. What do you think? What would we call our album?
The Millennial Diner Idiots.
Oh, I like that. That's good. I like that.
American Millennial Diner. If you put American at the beginning of something,
Yeah.
you're really making a statement about its, your goal, your thematic goals, right?